All right, I am live. Let me make sure that I can see myself on YouTube because I'm sorry, because StreamYard broadcasts to YouTube. Let me make an announcement over on my original Big Discussions 76 channel in case anyone wants to come over here and hang out and listen to me ramble for a little bit. Let's see. Switch accounts. All right, so I am live. Okay, create post. All right, I see some more. Well, I would say some more folks, but the number was just zero. So I see some folks are here. Thank you for being here. I just shared this over on my original Big Discussions 76 channel. I have a lot I want to say in the next hour. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this stream today. I woke up a little bit later than I wanted to, and then I had two meetings. But over on my original Big Discussions 76 channel, I did a stream about lessons learned from YouTubing. And one of the lessons was you gotta soldier on, even when you don't feel like it. And even when you have a small audience, you gotta soldier on and get the thing done. And that's going to be a theme of today's talk as well. So I'm going to play the intro and then I am going to start. Um, yeah, hey, I'm listening. Thank you for stopping through and humoring me. Today's discussion is not gonna it's not gonna involve any science story per se, but well, you'll see once I set it up. It's gonna be about the field of science and science education and science careers and the culture of science. And I'm going to talk to you guys on the other side of the intro about why I decided to do this. But if you look at the trailer for this channel, one of the things that I mentioned was STEM advocacy. So laying the blueprint for others, laying the blueprint for those coming after me, so that they're not reinventing the wheel. And I just actually did the first live on the Johnson C. Smith University STEM alumni Instagram page. So, and the reason I started that was because I wanted to pass on some of this knowledge to young people who could use it the most. Anyway, I'm going to play the intro and I will see you guys on the other side. I don't have a super chat over here. I have to get many, many more watch hours before YouTube will grant me that. I do have a Cash App and a PayPal that is here in case anyone sees fit to make a donation during the stream. So I will see you all on the other side of the intro and I'll jump in. All right, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. First of all, please like this stream, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. Once again, I don't have a super chat over here. I have several watch hours to make up before YouTube will grant that over here. So if you want to make a donation, my Cash App and PayPal are there in the chat, and if you're watching the playback, they're in the description box as well. I see Don Calypso has come through. I'm listening has come through. Sheet has come through. She, thank you for your continued support. I know in your channel you say Dr. Dunbar has good content. Well, I appreciate that. I know not everybody understands it. I think today's discussion will be a little bit more friendly to the non-scientist, especially, yeah, and a lot of this information today, if you know someone, if you know a young person in your circle who has an aptitude for the STEMs, this would, as much of this as you understand, this would be good to pass on or even to show this to them. Let's see. The Big Words LLC Newsletter. I'm a YouTube content creator and a writer, and you're going to see some of that today. I'm not going to read everything. I'll be dropping links in the chat. I do have a lot of points I want to get to, but the link to the letter is in the description box. Thank you to everyone who signed up. There's a 2-paragraph greeting there, and then there's a description button at the bottom. I just sent the first one out. These will go out monthly. Again, I'm a YouTube content creator and a writer working on a book, and I have multiple blogs and those kinds of things. So I'll drop the link in the chat right now for folks who are coming in. And once again, thank you to everyone who has signed up thus far. So today's stream, I'm going to have some points I want to get to. And if no one wants to say anything afterwards, then I'll just shut it down and stretch out and get ready to go to the cigar lounge later on and relax. But if folks want to come up afterwards and say some words, you'll be welcome to do so for a little while. Okay, so this stream is entitled A Discussion on the Culture of Science and Scientific Research. Okay. So what's the backdrop for this one? And I'm representing my HBCU today. We just had our final Washington, D.C. alumni chapter for Johnson C. Smith University. Slow down. Johnson C. Smith University. And today my tenure as treasurer ended. So I'm freed up to do some other things. But that was one way that I was giving back to my HBCU. Okay. Today's stream is entitled A Discussion on the Culture of Science and Scientific Research. Okay. Now, I've been contemplating doing this for a while, and last summer I did present my essay entitled The Story of How I Earned My STEM Degree as a Minority. You can go back in my library and watch that. That is below in the description box. But this involves the transfer of knowledge, okay, which I'm very, very big on. A couple of nights ago, Art Newstall, who's an educator himself, he had a stream. I think she came in and the discussion went in some other directions. I dropped off. But Art asked me, I think he was talking about different ethnic groups and graduations and what these different ethnic groups are being groomed to do. And he kept showing Asian graduates and Arabic graduates and Jewish graduates and African-American graduates. And he kept asking, what are these kids being groomed to do? Where are they going to go after this? So again, I think the transfer of knowledge is critical. It's one thing for us to say, you should go into the STEM fields. You should go into pharmacology or nuclear physics or engineering or some aspect of aerospace. But what goes into that? And as a matter of fact, last weekend, one of the bigger content creators from I'll just say from the B1 sector, he did a stream on um, pilot training and how there are a lot of kids in Atlanta, particularly of color, who are hanging out on the corners doing nothing and who could benefit from pilot training and learning how to get into the airline industry as pilots. So the transfer of knowledge, what all goes into being a pharmacologist, what all goes into being a nuclear physicist. So I dropped a video over on my original channel, which was in part inspired by, okay, I'm going to make an admission, that was inspired by the Pineapple Girl and then the nuclear physicist. I'm very cautious these days about creating clickbait. Someone in my circle has talked to me about creating clickbait and just chasing the herd and just chasing things that everyone else is talking about. So when I make content now, I have this voice in my ear saying, okay, are you making clickbait or are you making something that's generally substantial and that's generally adding to our body of knowledge? So I talked about that without talking about what I was talking about. And there's a reason I did that. But one of the things I got to in that pre-record, which is on my community tab here, and which is in the description box below, is that when you go to become a scientist, and if I was talking to that young man, I would tell him, and I would have told him, okay, you're a nuclear physicist. You're launching off into a different world, a world in which is going to be hard for some people to follow. You're launching off into a world where you're going to be speaking a different language, and your entire focus is going to be different from what these people are used to. So you need to be mindful of that. Now, the other thing is, I think a lot of there are young people like myself who launched off I launched off into my science training without understanding the importance of what I was doing. So I thought instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to get my PhD, I'm going to learn these scientific tools so I can become a captain of industry, so I can do something big, so I can cure cancer or whatever. I heard my father's voice and I heard other people's voices in terms of, well, you're still in school, you don't have any money, you're broke, okay, and maybe you should just focus on school. It's true, you should focus on school, but I was also carrying around, okay, I don't have a lot of money, okay, and I also just got involved in some things because I didn't appreciate the importance of what I was doing. So a lot of this is about point of view. If you look at it as, okay, I'm on my way to doing something big and becoming something big, I need to protect my life and I need to position myself as such. That's one thing. But if you're looking at it as I'm a student and I don't have any money and I'm not valuable, that's a much different way of looking at things. So Mr. Nuclear Physicist and Pineapple Girl, they were in part an inspiration for this, but also knowing what I went through, I think this needs to be passed on. And so these are things, when going back to Art New Styles panel, these are things that we have to, what I'm going to share today, these are things we need to tell young people, especially the boys, when they launch off into these STEM careers, because many of them, they won't bear fruit. They won't reach their peak earning potential until later. And that's a hang up for a lot of us, is that you don't reach your peak earning potential until later. So there's a huge time investment in the beginning. You can't really see what the fruit is going to be, especially if you're not if you didn't grow up in a family where they're scientists, like I didn't, but you have to stay in there somehow, stay in the fight, soldier on. So that's what this stream is about. Okay. So let's jump in here. So that's the inspiration for this. So let's just talk about my background briefly, and then I'm going to bring up my talking points that are going to cover the culture, quote unquote, of science and what I would have told nuclear physicist guy if I could have sat down and talked with him. And then, hey, you never know. Maybe at some point, me and nuclear physicist guy, maybe we will talk. Maybe this will become a bigger discussion. So my backgrounds, you guys know that I have a background in pharmacology, right? So that's the science of drugs. That's the basic research. That's understanding the mechanisms and understanding how the body handles these drugs, um, which organ system the drug works in. All this information goes into how drugs come to market and how immunizations come to market, like the ones that have been in the news for the last 2 years. There's a lot of research that goes into that. But what is research? My research project at the University of Michigan involved this enzyme, neuronal nitric oxide synthase. Okay, that enzyme is there are 3 isoforms. It's a homodimer, which means that it has 2 identical parts, and a heme center. It has an oxygenase domain and a reductase domain on each monomer, and it kind of dimerizes like this. That's the native conformation. What it does, and I'm going to move through this quickly. What the enzyme does is it catalyzes the production of nitric oxide from L-arginine. L-arginine is an amino acid. Okay, and your two products are nitric oxide and L-citrulline. Okay, and both of those are used as markers of activity. Okay, the enzyme, we know that L-arginine is the substrate. Okay, and there are drugs that interact with that enzyme as well, like such as guanabens, which is an antihypertensive. And then you have analogs like N-nitroarginine there, which looks similar to the natural substrate L-arginine. Okay, so there's a whole aspect of looking at this enzyme, which just involves what we call enzymology, or how the enzyme works, its catalytic properties, what cofactors it needs, what fits into the active site, those kinds of things. That's enzymology. It's 3-dimensional structure. That's its enzymology. Well, what we also know, and I'm going to keep this brief and I'm going somewhere with this. Thank you for those of you who are humoring me right now. What we also know that our bodies are made up of billions of cells with enzymes like this. And we know that at any given time, there are multiple processes happening in our cells. Some of those processes include, okay, guys, I'm getting my antenna icon, even though I have my Ethernet cord plugged up. Do I still sound good? Do I still look good? Okay, it disappeared. Okay. So we also know, and this is covered in lectures and textbooks and scientific journals. Where is it? I'm looking for one of my cartoons here. Please bear with me. Please hit the like button. Once again, if you want to make a donation, that information is below. And it's right there in the chat. I'm looking for my signal transduction cartoon. I can't find it. Just bear with me for one more minute. I hope you guys are having a good Saturday thus far. I'm not seeing my cartoon for signal transduction and intracellular signaling, but maybe I don't need it. Everything in this folder is alphabetized. SDS page, secondary antibodies. Nope, it's not there. Okay, so I'll have to talk my way through it. You know what? I did this before. I'll just make it. I'll just build it as I fly it. Okay, signal transduction. Okay. This busy cartoon will give you a feel for what I'm talking about. And unfortunately, it is not high resolution. But this one, okay, this is a good one. Just blow that up. And guys, there's a reason I'm sharing this. There's a method to my madness, as they say. Okay. That's the chime when Microsoft PowerPoint creates a PDF. Okay, I see some more folks have come in. Please hit that like button if you want to make a donation. My Cash App and PayPal are there, but please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Wow, the viewership went up when I stopped talking. Maybe I should just do a stream and just zip it. Okay, that's a joke. Signal transduction. There it is. All right. So we know that our bodies are made up of billions and billions of cells, each with a specialized function. Those are all the organelles in it. I'm not going to go over that. That's review. But what I want you to take away from this, for those unfamiliar with this, is that at any given time, there are too many signaling processes and pathways happening within our cells. Okay. Um, and these processes are regulated by receptors, kinases, phosphatases, nuclear hormone receptors, but also there are proteases in here. Proteases are enzymes which cleave other proteins. So I'm just going to keep this short because I need to keep this moving. When I was at the University of Michigan, my graduate advisor was interested in the 26S proteasome ubiquitination pathway. So this is a specific protease system, and evidence showed that our enzyme was degraded. The degradation of our enzyme was enhanced by that system when it metabolized certain drugs. Okay. And I'm going to stop that there. And then I'm going to transition over and say that I was able to publish 2 first author papers from this project. Okay. One is here. One of the bigger content creators, I think I alluded to him earlier, he says, I don't bring receipts, I bring invoices. Okay, my first author paper is here. And you can look this up on Google. Where is it? Oh, I know. It's because let me close this. Someone asked where BGS is at. Yeah, where is he? Maybe he can share this to his community tab. He can wave his holy scepter. This is my first author paper. You guys can look this up. It was entitled Ubiquitination and Degradation of Neuronal Nitric Oxide Synthase in Vitro. Dimer destabilization protects the enzyme from proteolysis. Okay. That language is highly esoteric. The layperson will not know what that talks about, what that's talking about. Mr. Troy Steeler said he already shared it. Okay. Well, thank you, BGS, for sharing. That's my first author paper. This is my second first author paper, and there's a reason I'm showing you guys this, because this is publishing is a part of the culture of science. Again, it's one thing for us to encourage young people to go in these fields, but if they don't know what the game is, if they don't know why they're doing this, if they don't know what's entailed in it, they're going to wash out. Okay, and I came very, very close to washing out during my journey. This is my second first author paper. Okay. And I did attempt to create some content on this a year ago. I might revisit it now that I'm better at presenting this stuff here. But this is my second first author paper. Tetrabiopterin protects against guanabin's mediated inhibition of neuronal nitric oxide synthase in vitro and in vivo. I know Don Calypso, that's probably, all this talk is probably music to your ears. You're probably listening to this and saying, oh yeah, that sounds good. But I know the layperson is looking at that and saying, you know what the hell is he talking about? This is part of the culture of science, publishing. So I just wanted to show you what I just described about my thesis project. We captured this on paper. We published this. Now let's talk about what all goes into this. And this is significant because this is the culture of science. And going back to nuclear physicist guy, as I'll describe, when you're doing something like this, there are a lot of things you have to keep in mind. And there are a lot of things you have to guard against. And there are a lot of things you have to protect yourself and your project from. Okay, so let's jump in. I'm going to leave, before I do this, I'm going to leave a couple of links in the chat. This one, and these are all below. This is the story of how I earned my STEM degree. Okay. The question came up, do people read these days? If you don't read, this will probably just, but if you read, those are there. This is how my HBCU led to my STEM career. This is entitled Researching Your Career Revisited, Wisdom from a STEM Professor at my HBCU. And this one is entitled The Transferrable Skills from a Doctoral Degree in the Basic Sciences. And what's so valuable about science training is that it empowers you to do other things. So you might not stay in science. You might do like Robert F. Smith and go start a private equity firm. You might start a company of some other kind. You might do something else, but that's what science training empowers you to do. Okay, so the culture of science and research. And I'm going to tie this all together. Hopefully it makes sense to you guys. I'm just going to talk my way through this one by one. So what goes into those two research papers that I showed you guys? And these are things that, again, I would tell nuclear physicist guy or anyone aspiring to do something like that, or to get a PhD in pharmacology. These things are especially important to keep in mind when you're coming from a family or a background where there are no STEM professionals. Okay. Because no one from there is going to be able to guide you through this. And then reassimilating back into your people, your family, socially, you might have a hard time, because this is your life. This is what you're trained for. This is the culture you're immersed in. And much of this runs counter to where we come from. You guys got that? Okay. So nuclear physicist guy, yeah, his life is gonna run counter to that, what he experienced on that panel, right? And then for him to engage in that career and further that career, much of that is going to run counter to at least a lot of where a lot of us come from. Okay. And this goes for the technologies, the engineerings. This goes for all that as well. Okay. It's almost, Don Calypso's commenting right there, right now. It's almost like Jedi training. Well, Don Calypso, Jedi training, it's almost like a martial art. You know, it's a set way of doing things. Okay. So when I say this runs counter to where a lot of us come from, what do I mean by that? Please get those likes up. If you want to make a donation, that information is below in the description box. Okay, I'll share it once again. The acquisition of knowledge. Reading about protons and neutrons and cells, and reading up on the latest science article. The acquisition of knowledge. That's a part of the culture of science. Okay. And these are things that not everybody is interested in. But as I'll describe, that's a critical piece of this, the acquisition of knowledge, and understanding what's happening in your field and just what's happening in the science world in general. One of the professors, well, actually all the professors at my HBCU, they beat us up over this all the time. And then at the University of Michigan, they hammered this into us as well. You guys aren't reading enough. That's why reading is so important. That's why when Dr. Tia-San Johnson goes on about Black boys only reading at 10%, reading and acquiring knowledge is a critical piece of science. And if you can't do that, you're locked out. Articulate speech. Okay. Those titles I just read, let me read them again. The first paper was Ubiquitination and Degradation of Neuronal Nitric Oxide Synthase in Vitro. Dimer stabilization protects the enzyme from proteolysis. Tetrahydrobiopterin protects guanabin's mediated inhibition of neuronal nitric oxide synthase in vitro and in vivo. So in the science world, speaking articulately, you have to be able to do that in front of an audience, at lab meeting, on a job interview. So in some circles, that's perceived as speaking a certain way. It's perceived as speaking like a specific color. But in this realm, whether you're in one of the sciences or in one of the technologies, speaking articulately is critical, because people are going to form opinions about you and your intellect based upon how you speak and comport yourself. Comport. A business acumen. Okay. Science is a business. It's not just something that you're doing. Science and technology, these are businesses. These are not just things that you're doing just for the hell of it, at least not as you move on into the graduate level, into academia, into private industry, or into regulatory. This is a business. And I didn't understand that when I started my science journey. And those two papers that I showed you guys, the end result is the paper, but each of those papers easily costed tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars to maybe even millions to conduct those experiments, to buy the equipment, the reagents, the lab space, all of it. And so when you hear me talk and when you hear Nicole Ali talk, Nicole was last Saturday, Nicole was in her lab doing experiments on a Saturday morning. Okay. When you look at Nicole talk about what she's doing and all the equipment in her lab, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of thousands of dollars. So the people running those labs, they have to have a business mind. They have to figure out how much money they're going to need to conduct those experiments. And they have to make sure they're coming in under budget. And then every couple of years, they have to get more funding. And they have to sell themselves. They have to sell their ideas. So there's a business acumen. There's a business aspect to this. Critical thinking skills. You have to be able to think. You have to be able to think logically. You have to be able to think critically. You have to be able to question things. You have to be able to make logical connections. And you have to be able to think of one experiment and then another experiment and another experiment. You have to think about how one grant fits together with this one, fits together with this one. You have to understand what your competitors are doing and what your competitors have done. Critical thinking. You have to question things and not just take people's data and people's conclusions at face value. Part of science is questioning the science and questioning other science. Conducting research versus studying. When I was going through my graduate journey, my father, I was explaining to him my experiments and my research, and I remember he said to me, "That sounds like some hard studying. Must be some serious studying." Well, we weren't studying; we were doing research in a lab, okay, to publish, and oftentimes the results were unknown, so we weren't studying. We were doing research in a lab, and it had several job-like aspects. It was an apprenticeship. I had a workbench. So there's a difference between conducting research and studying. There's some studying involved, but you're on the edges searching for new knowledge. And that's a different thing from studying to take a test. Curiosity. That's self-explanatory. Scientists are curious. You have to ask questions. Okay. UFO Kamikaze said nuclear physicist guy went dumpster diving by appearing on that show. You can make that argument, but I think there's also something about, and I didn't understand this later myself, understanding the importance of what you're doing, understanding the importance and the seriousness of what you're working on, and then you gotta protect that. I mean, that's not universal to, that's not unique to science, but yeah, dedication to your craft. Like I said, Nicole was in the lab last Saturday when I was streaming. So sometimes you have to be up early on a Saturday. You have to work late on a weeknight. Sometimes you go in and work on Sundays. I did that when I was doing my research, while other people are at the club, while other people are hanging out watching TV or doing something. As a scientist, it's a craft. So sometimes you're working late, all hours of the night, on the weekend, while other people are out having experiences and doing leisure activities. Discipline. That goes right alongside with that. Family and knowledge of other cultures. What do I mean by this? When you work in a group or a research lab, in many instances, it becomes a family, or it can become a family. And I didn't realize this until, well, I kind of saw it happening on my own research journey as a student and as a postdoc. But I didn't realize this until a science meeting a couple of years ago, and I met a woman a Greek woman, and I'll just say that I saw her and her former lab mates interacting, and I realized that they were a bit of a family, and it's often an international family. So you start learning about other people's cultures, whether they're Jewish or Chinese or Japanese or Indian. You start to learn things about other cultures. Forward thinking. As a scientist, as an engineer, as a nuclear physicist, you have to think. Your thinking has to become long term. You have to think down the road. You can't just think about now. How do I feel now? What do I want to do now? You have to think months, sometimes years. You have to think ahead. Not everybody can do that. Some people are just thinking about how they feel and what they want to do right now. Those experiments are going to have an impact for years to come. That new operating system we're creating, that new algorithm, that new artificial intelligence we're creating right now, it's taking time for me to create it right now, but it's going to have impact for years down the road. I'm working on this degree now. I'm not getting big money now, but this is going to bear fruit down the road. So being forward thinking. Focus, that's self-explanatory. Going to science meetings and networking, that's an important part of it. You have to rub elbows with your peers. You have to know what they're doing, in your competitors. You have to know what they're working on. You have to present your work articulately. And so that's important. Idea generation. A major part of this is thinking of ideas, thinking of what's unknown, thinking of what the other guy did wrong, or what the other guy, or why the other guy made the wrong conclusion. Thinking about beating the other guy to the finding. Thinking about how to get the experiments done in the most efficient and expedient way. Idea generation. How am I going to get this next grant? So these are all things that pharmacologists and nuclear physicists, you have to be thinking about these things, and you have to figure out that involves sometimes shutting the noise out. I'll let you guys put two and two together about what the noise is. Okay. Well, you know what? I'll stop right there since I'm halfway through. I'll give you guys a little hint. I shared my blog post regarding the story of how I earned my STEM degree as a minority. I'm going to pull that up really quickly because this applies to that. The majority of this is talking about stuff inside the lab, learning points inside the lab. I had there's me about 15 years ago, no beard, all my hair is black. I had a really tenacious and brilliant and bright graduate advisor. He was Asian American. Those are hard people to work for, but if you can stay in there, you'll learn a lot. And he didn't give up on me. And he could have given up on me. Most of this is about learning how to do science, but the bottom involves social aspects. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, learning to manage my life outside of the lab so I could do science. So I describe in this essay 2 incidents where 2 of my buddies almost got me into fights, almost got me into violent situations. One buddy had too much to drink at a bar one night, accidentally splashed a guy. This guy was following us around the venue. Another buddy was looking at some other guy's girlfriend, and the other guy saw it. And there was a potential fight because my buddy didn't want to run. He didn't want to leave, and he wanted to stay there and confront the guys. Okay, I was home in Buffalo visiting. I had to go back to Michigan and do my research and make my presentations. You can't show up making your presentations in a sling or with teeth missing because your buddy wanted to get into a confrontation with some guys at a nightclub. You can't do that. Okay. Also, I was in a chaotic relationship at the time. So that's something I would point out to nuclear physicists. You got to be careful about who you associate with and the kinds of things that you're continuing to get involved in as you progress in your career in your field. You got to protect it. You got to protect it. Almost done, guys. Almost done. I hope I'm saying something valuable here to someone. But these are challenges. I mean, because you if you come from a community where there are no scientists, you're going to launch off into a new world. You're going to be speaking a different language, and you're still going to be expected to conform to the norms of that community. And once you launch off into a science career and your education, a lot of what you learn is going to conflict with where you come from. Internalizing your project. It's a very, very nebulous thing to have a research project. You have to understand it yourself. And it took me a little while to understand those two papers I showed you guys. There was talk after talk after talk with my mentor about what the question was and about what the project was about. And then for someone not in that culture, working on a research project, once again, it's nebulous. They don't know why you're in the lab. They don't know what you're doing there. They don't know why you have to go back on a Saturday morning. Okay. But you have to make it yours. That has to become your baby. And not everybody's going to understand that. Knowing your field, that gets back to acquiring knowledge, minimizing distractions. I just talked about that in my essay. Yes, the essay that I showed you guys. Perseverance and true grit. In the biological sciences, a lot of experiments don't work right away. You have to stay in there and keep at it until you get something that works. Sometimes you're competing against another lab in another state or in another country. So you have to figure out a way to soldier on and to keep going. If you don't come from that background, you might wash out, unfortunately. And that's why knowing stories like Percy Julian's and watching Unforgotten Genius is important, because he went through the process. And I when I watched Forgotten Genius, I wished that I had seen it earlier, but those images aren't presented to us in our tribe all the time. Plasticity of mind. Plasticity is a scientific term for being flexible and malleable. So as a scientist, as an engineer, as a nuclear physicist or whatever, you have to have an imaginative, malleable mind. Planning skills. All of this requires a lot of planning, a lot of organizing, a lot of long-term thinking. Okay. Some people are just living for today. They're just functioning in the here and now, but you have to think about years down the road for your grants, for your experiments, all of that. Publishing. I just showed you guys my two first author papers in the science community. That's huge. That's what you're there for. You have to show some sort of receipt or invoice for what you've done and that you've actually done something. Again, for the non-science community, for people who aren't familiar with this, it's a very, very nebulous thing. I want to thank Malcolm Smith for the Cash App. Thank you for that. Oral presentation skills. Again, articulate speech, that's critical. Whether you're in the biological sciences like me and Nicole, whether or not you're an engineer, whether or not you're a nuclear physicist, being able to speak the King's English and pronounce words people have never heard before outside of that scientific world, that's critical. But other people will listen to you and say, and question potentially your ethnicity, question your blackness, question your how much from the community you are. These are all things that you experience and things you have to ward off and endure. Reading skills. Once again, you have to keep up on what's happening in your field. You have to ask questions. You have to know what the other guy is doing. You have to be able to read papers, read grants, read everything. And that's why when Dr. Johnson goes on and on and on about Black boys only reading at 10% level, well, they're locked out of all of this. So there's no way you can do this and not be able to read. Taking your project personally, okay? Whatever it is you're working on, whether it's being a nuclear physicist or a pharmacologist or a cancer biologist or whatever, that has to become your mission. It might not bear immediate fruit in terms of money, but later on, once you get those skills and you show that you've done something and you have an expertise in something, that's when the payout comes. Okay. And in our tribe, you guys know that the challenge is, especially as men, is to get the money early. Science careers don't lend themselves to that. You have to be able to adapt new technologies. You have to understand the game, your field. So for me, for Nicole, it's doing experiments, it's publishing papers, it's presenting at meetings, it's those kinds of things, keeping up on what's current in the field. For the technologies, I imagine there's some iteration of that. But the point is, looking at all this stuff, being in this lifestyle, being in this culture, it's very different than the culture that we come from. Okay. It runs counter to so much of what we come from. And then even who we're expected to be once we get out into the adult world. And then finally, writing skills. You have to be able to read. You have to be able to write. You have to be able to speak and present. Okay. But writing skills, a lot of this starts with writing. You have this great idea. You have these good ideas. You have to put those down on paper in such a way that other people understand them. The same thing is true with speaking and orally presenting. So that's all these things together. This is the culture of science. This is what you go on to become, whether or not you stay in academia, whether or not you stay in, you go into the private sector, you work for Pfizer or Merck or Amgen or one of the technology companies like Tesla or SpaceX or something else. These are all things that these people are doing every day in real time. And if you're completely immersed in this, you're not going to know everything else that everybody else knows. You're not going to know, you might not know the latest recording artist. You might not know the latest dance. You might not know, and your life might not be about pleasure all the time. Your life might be your field of study. It might be being immersed in your field of study, and that's okay. If I were talking to guys like nuclear physicist guy, I would share these things with him, but I would also encourage him to expand other parts of himself. Don't just have your life be this. This is your craft, but also add some other things to yourself. But learn your craft and master your craft first and foremost, and then add the other stuff in. Add the other stuff in as you go, as you can, and then later as you see fit. So guys, that's all I've got. Does anyone want to come up and say something on the topic? If you say yes, I'll drop the link. If not, then I'll wind down. I know this was a lot, but I thought that this was worth capturing. And there are a lot of people, particularly from my background. I'm from the east side of Buffalo. A lot of these things I had to learn on the fly, and there was the potential for me to wash out early. I had an advisor who didn't want to give up on me, who didn't want to quit on me, as long as I wouldn't quit on myself. But a lot of these things, they conflicted with where I came from. They conflicted with the images of us in pop culture, and they conflicted socially. So these are just things, as we're encouraging young people, especially young men, to get into these fields. These are all things to keep in mind. I'll drop the link, guys. Please stay on topic. Whatever you say when you come up, keep it clean. Okay, I want this to be evergreen. I want this to stay up. I don't want any cussing, you guys know what I'm talking about. Keep it clean when you come up. Keep it PG when you come up. All right. Okay. Yeah, Don Calypso. I want this to be evergreen. The link is there if anyone wants to come up and say something. But keep it clean, keep it cool. Let's see. Yeah, the StreamYard link is there. The StreamYard link is there. Okay. So we got Salty the Equalizer first. Hold on, Salty.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. I appreciate the stream. I think it's important. Um, for me personally, it's not foreign, but apparently it's foreign because, again, it's a cultural thing. So a lot of people don't, well, a lot of us don't realize, what it takes. And I know you're being very humble, but to be quite honest, the STEM fields, high finance, all that stuff, it's really for the elite. And it's pretty much relentless. I mean, if you want to be, in the top percentile, especially the 90 percentile, I mean, there's pretty much almost no days off, really. So a lot of people are not used to that kind of life because it's a lifestyle. So
Yeah.
so they think that there's something wrong with you, but there isn't anything wrong with you, because what they don't realize or don't respect is that a lot of the stuff that we're doing is why we progress, as human beings, and why the water runs, why the water's clean. I mean, just basic stuff that we take, especially in this country, that we don't apparently appreciate. So, I think you're just, personally, I think you're being super humble. Let's be real. It's
I've
an
been
elite
accused
group.
of that in the past. Yep.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, because statistically speaking, most people aren't in these fields and or cannot, do it. So it's not looking down on people. It's just a fact. You see what I'm saying? So respecting what very few people can do that actually benefits society, I don't know why I can't understand. I mean, I get it, but it doesn't make any sense to look down upon those of us who can, and or just make fun of us. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, it was easy for me because again of my parents, and this is what a lot of people don't realize. On the surface, if you to look at my parents, you would wonder like, how they got together. But then when you look at their backgrounds of what my grandfather did on my father's side and what my grandfather did on my mother's side, then you would say, okay, it makes sense why they got together. You see what I'm saying? So we don't see that. So these younger, especially, black boys or young black men, they get caught up in what is popular, unfortunately, and generally speaking, what's popular is not elite. So they get so they start to, in my opinion, lose themselves in all the hard work that they've put in. And I get it because the average Joe, they're not in that environment, so they can't relate.
Hmm.
But socially, those of us who are quote unquote elite, what little time we do have to go in those social environments, again, there's not a lot of relating, and that's a disconnect. And to me, it's just have a conversation about that. I mean, like, there's no point in sitting here poking holes at each other, just saying, okay, well, this is what I do, this is what it takes. That's it. I'm not looking down on you or anything like that, but this like this is not a game.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean that's what I wish. I mean, literally my second oldest nephew just graduated yesterday, and I'm literally just coming by the house again, and I'm gonna sit him down and his younger brother, and I'm gonna go through the numbers with them. Which something I wish that I had. So they're pretty much gonna be getting the type of information that I got right now at 39, at 18 and 17. So by the time they're 20, and I told them yesterday, by the time I told them I expect them to be where I'm at by the time they're 25.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. We've been joined by Don Calypso.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Hey,
How we
Don.
doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Am I coming through clear? It's my first time trying to use that headset on
Yeah, man. You
this
got the high
system.
tech headset on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they give it to us at work, but it has excellent sound, so I like to use it privately as well. Um, well, the reason I wanted to come up is just to give my quick 2 cents on the cost it takes, to make it in the STEM field. I mean, I'm pretty sure you paid the price, speaking as far as socially. Well, you may not have to. It kind of depends on, what are your social skills coming into it. But if you're starting off as not as being an introverted kind of person or not that socially skilled, and you go into the STEM field where it requires all your time, it is a heavy price to pay. Like I tapped in the chat room earlier, my advisor, my first advisor, who unfortunately passed away, when we first our very first lecture, he didn't go straight into teaching. He went into what is cost us if we want to stick to being a biology major. He explained that when your friends are out partying on the weekends, you either might be in the lab doing some work or you're going to be in the library studying. That it is a heavy price to pay. If you don't feel like you're up for it, you can drop out. That was the very first thing. And also, now this I know is going to piss off some people in the audience because I'm not American born. Yes, I am an immigrant. So, a lot of people have an issue with any immigrant speaking on anything dealing with the ADO/FBA. But one of the issues I noticed when I came to school is that there were so few Black Americans, like native born Black Americans, in the STEM, except for IT. I did see a lot of Black Americans going to computer science, but when it came to biology, they tended to avoid those fields. And it was I tried my best to try to recruit some Black Americans to go into that field. Not so much. They were not interested. And even now in the professional where I work in pharma, I see Black folks. Most of them are either fellow Caribbeans or Africans. Very few ADOS Black Americans, and a lot of those I do see are women. Not that many ADOS Black men.
Yep.
So, and I think part of it is because it's not seen as sexy. You know, when you come from Africa to Caribbean, even though it's not a hip and cool thing to be a scientist, it is seen as, oh, it's intellectual. There's some prestige to it. But from
That's
what
right.
I've observed in my 20 years, my 22 years in this country, it is, I mean, it's a turn off. If you're a Black man and you tell an African might see it as cool, but you tell ADOS Black woman as a guy, you know, that's what you do, they're gonna be turned off. That's a price you have to be willing to pay. You have to love what you do. Don't go into STEM just to make money. Because yeah, you will make money if you go in some fields, but you got to do it because you love it. You have a desire to learn. You have a desire to do the research. If you're not passionate, don't do it because you know the social price is too high, and STEM is anti-swag. So now that the ADOS folks are gonna want to kill me and I'm gonna get deported, so I'll shut up for now and let Professor Black Ops get the mic.
Nah, man. What you speaking is truth, Donna Calypso. I'm ADOS epi as you could get, man. We can't push back or talk negatively about the truth. I'm in IT, and I promise you, there's not a lot of Black men. I got a computer science degree. I was on a panel with a couple younger guys. Each of us was a decade apart, and each one of us was the only Black guy that graduated in computer science. So my question back to the panel was, are we gaining any ground? Are we getting any better? If I was the only one in 1990 with a computer science degree, young brother, super smart, shout out to him. Max DeMillion graduated 2 years ago. He was the only one in his class with a computer science degree. So the question is, are we making any progress? And like you said, it's anti-swag. The swag come back when you're 30, 40, and you're making 100,000, right? And you got the big house, right? So then that's when your swag comes in. But like you said, it's a price to pay. When you're trying to figure out that calculus 2 to take an area of a tornado that I have never used in real life, but you got to pass the class, right? I think from an IT perspective, the thing that's really happening is I think certifications are coming up real big now as a stepping stone to get into IT. I still think it's anti-swag, but I think that's helping a lot of young Black men make a decision and get into IT maybe and maybe take that on, computer science, machine learning. The doc's been with me in engineering cannabis, so we out there trying to push the word and get that out. But like you said, it's a price to pay, man. I'm 53, studying for my AWS certifications because I got 10 more years to retire. And the one thing that's negative about IT is you can make a lot of money, but each 5 and 10 years, you got to jump on a hot thing or you're going to be a BlackBerry programmer. And they make $0 now, right? If you don't stay with the hottest thing and new things, you can disappear in IT, right? You can catch the $100,000 bag or you can miss the $100,000 bag, right? So that's what I push back. But I think the guys that want to get it and it's out here to get, I'm not super intelligent. I think I'm average intelligence. I make well over 6 figures. So I just tell people, let's get it. Let's study. Let's put in the work and get it, man. I'm throwing back up to the doctor, Don. So I don't want to stay on the soapbox and take it all up. So
No. I appreciate that, Professor Black Ops, and I think there might be some people who listen to this and say, why do they keep saying swag? Why do they keep saying anti-swag? Mm-hmm. Well, the reality is that in our ethnicity in the United States, socially and culturally, whether it's through pop culture, the mainstream media, swag is highly rated. Swag is highly, it's highly weighted. Okay, and there are archetypes for us in pop culture and the mainstream media, and if you run culture to that, you may be seen as a bit of an alien.
Well, let me jump in real quick on that. If you go to the movies, John Sally was on one of the Bad Boys. They had a 6'9" guy in Coke bottle glasses talking about he's the computer guy. If you look at The Last Central Intelligence, the Asian guy had a black girlfriend in a mouse outfit. He was the computer guy. they made all those guys nerdy, couldn't get the women, or the women they got was wearing mouse suits. So even the largest society and our society are pushing it, especially IT. You a nerd, you got the pocket protector on, you getting beat up by the alpha male, they're stealing your woman, right? So it's pushed by the media even. Going back to you, Doc.
Okay. Salt, you're Don Calypso. Do either of you want to say anything to that or something else? Or
I was gonna say,
Oh, you can go.
I was gonna say, even if the media is pushing that image, the thing is nowadays, especially with IT and stuff, I think it's more cool, it's more accepted, especially considering that it pays well and stuff. We're in the age of social media, so if you know how to do IT, you're a god walking amongst ants. However, and I could be wrong, and this is why I was gonna say, so the ADOS FBA folks gonna want me deported. It looks like from what I've seen in my 20 years observing here, it looks like in the Black American social context, if you're in any like STEM field, IT and stuff, it's almost like you become incompatible with the rest of what I call the community, as we say in the Black manosphere. It's almost like anything you go outside of entertainment and sports. So if you're not a rapper or football player or basketball player, somehow you're less than a man. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It's like you become incompatible. But if you find your tribe with other ethnicities, then you're a sellout. So on one hand, you're rejected, but if you find a group of people that accept you as you are, especially other folks who are science minded and they appreciate you, and you go with them, then you're a traitor. Black men that you have to be willing to pay if you're going to go in STEM. Are you, in order to fulfill your professional purpose, are you willing to face ostracism and outright rejection from the community?
mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah,
and I hope I wasn't boring out. It seems like
you were
my
a
signal
bit, but it wasn't
might
to
not
the point where.
be great outside.
Yeah, I just think that.
Sorry about that. I gotta keep an eye on the grill. Make sure I gotta keep an eye on this. That's why I'm outside.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to wrap up soon, but I think that going back to Art Newstall's panel, I just think that if you know a younger person who is going that route now, this is an important thing to talk about. What's going to be the cultural impact of you pursuing this field? How will you be perceived once you start off down that path? Because look at all these things I've written out here. Speaking articulately, reading, thinking about your project or your cybersecurity, thinking, just spending your spare time not on leisure. These are all things that you're going to be called to do to excel in your field, and it's going to conflict with a lot of the neighborhood you come from, the culture.
What, Doc, I got a question for you real quick.
Go ahead.
So you said two things: is are we required to take that weight on of the community, or can we just say we're gonna do what we want to do? I'm putting that on you, Big Doc. I'm 53. I done made up my decision in life.
I think you got to accept. I mean, ride with whoever's going to accept you. If you're not going to be accepted, then you have to go with whoever's going to accept you.
Right. And my other question is, and I'm a little bit this to Don is, we'll see what the men think is. They ostracize you. They put you in a box. But when you 30, 40, and you get a PhD, those same women want you to come back and train their sons up. They demand you to come back and help the community. Is that a requirement? Can you say no? What's your thought about? Because those same people, Doc, know they want you to come and train them up. They want you to help their sons. They want you to help them, their offspring, get over the hump. The same women that probably reject you and called you nerdy and nobody wants you and you're not an alpha male. So those same people want you to come in the community tie and save it. So what's your thoughts on that?
Was that to me or Don Calypso?
Both of you. Don left. I think Don bored out.
Yeah, he lost his signal. Well, the
weird thing is BGS asked that question 3 years ago on his channel.
Mm-hmm.
The nerds. It's a video with a nerd with a little satchel like from the 50s walking out of the community, and I never forget. So that video always weighs on me. So I always ask that question.
Well, my mentality is if I can help out, and if I see fit to help out, if there's a need and I can help out, and if it's going to be appreciated, I don't mind helping someone.
Facts.
That's just, he's backstage. That's just me.
No, I feel you.
I will not help out of spite or whatever. But
you're a big man, Doc.
but you know what, Professor Black Ops, that's another conversation, because I've done quite a few career days here in the DMV, and it's a career day. Yeah. And I've been told, as I've described, I've been told you're the first scientist that I've ever met. I've been told that by other professionals. I've been told that by teachers. And so you also have to think about whether or not your efforts are going to do any good, whether or not people will appreciate, which you know, if you're only going to see them once a year. Because that, for me, that's pretty much what it's amounted to, going to do career days or doing a quote unquote STEM festival. I think that the mainstream media and pop culture, there needs to be more imaging, more widespread imaging of gentlemen like myself and yourself and Don Calypso, and I don't know if there's an interest in showing that imaging.
Showing the image of men like us, that would kind of go against the narrative. I mean, do people really, do the powers that be really want the image to go out there that there actually are intelligent Black men who are articulate, who can actually think on a high level? Because think about this. I mean, and one thing, from the whole time I've been in this country, you know, I'm not blind to like racism and especially the history in this country, how much more brutal it was to some degree compared to how Blacks were treated in the Caribbean or South America. But here's the thing. There was a time, people forget, there was a time ADOS Blacks would get killed or maimed for knowing how to read and write. So those same individuals, as much as they may talk about Black people, oh, look at them, they're ignorant, they're uneducated and stuff. Those are the same people that when they come across a Black person who is a scientist, high achieving, especially ADOS scientists, they're going to get such a case of cognitive dissonance that it could literally kill them. No, seriously. Some people, some of the most vehement racist individuals who are anti-Black, they're more comfortable with the image of a Pookie and Ray Ray, the stereotypical Pookie and Ray Ray with the pants hanging, who can't string two words together. They're more comfortable with that than a Black person who's professional, clean judicial record, high achieving, good grades. That messes their worldview. Because, okay, you know, keep the content evergreen, right? Some people, honestly, men like us, it really messes their worldview, because the only thing that gives them the strength to get up every morning and not take a gun to their mouth is to be able to say, at least I'm not an N-word. All right. So seeing you as a degenerate, you know, going around pollinating the hood with a bunch of kids you don't take care of and stuff, that makes them feel like, well, I'm better than that guy. But when they come across a Black man who's a scientist, you can read, you can express yourself, you're high achieving, that totally messes up their worldview. And some people can't stand that. And when you get a case of cognitive dissonance, you know why they teach in Psychology 101? You either do a paradigm shift where you realign your thinking in light of the new facts and data you see, or you try to destroy the source of the dissonance. And for a lot of people, be they in the community or outside of the community who have racist views against Black, coming across professional, intelligent, accomplished, clean judicial record Black men, they're going to try to eliminate the source of the dissonance. They're either going to try to slander you, or they may even try to delete you. So that's another thing you got to take into account. You will be hated by many simply for the mere fact that you exist and that you do well in your field, because you don't conform to their image of what a Black man should be.
Yeah, I get a lot of, I used to when I was younger, people want to try you to see if you really intellectually inclined in your subject. So I used to have people asking me weird cybersecurity questions when I come into the meeting. So I used to I love when people do that, because I'm going to show you how smart I am. I'm going to show you I'm about my craft. I'm going to show you I lab every day, right? So I enjoy that. And I tell young Black people, don't be scared of it, because people want their managers to see you. When people attack you, everybody's looking at you. So I'm going to show you I'm a bad man and why I get paid what I get paid, because I'm about this life. So that's how I take that.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, I don't really have any. Oh, Gabe A just entered the chat.
Oh, Gabe A coming up. Shout out to Gabe A.
Red team, blue team.
Shout out. It's my tech brother. Tech bros in the house.
Red alert. Shields up. Ready phases, low quantum torpedoes.
Shout out to the tech bros in the chat.
Okay. I don't have anything else. You guys have anything else you want to say?
I'll go first, because I gotta go. My father was a aerospace engineer, man.
Wow.
So I was raised in that life. You just need to stop being apologetic and having the feeling of being obligated to whatever, okay? Because a lot of times what they're trying to do is just make you this type of eunuch as last resort, okay? And it comes down to disrespecting yourself and, again, being unapologetic. I don't need to explain myself to you. I do the work every day. Period. You guys want to question me? Like, is it sincere? If it's not sincere, why even engage in the conversation? It's quite literally a waste of your time. You'll never get back. If they feel that they think that or feel that you're superior to them, let them feel that. You're busy doing your own thing. I don't care. And there's nothing wrong with that, because now you're gonna attract the people who do respect it and are legitimately curious. Okay, you only have a limited amount of time, so these gender wars amongst the community, in my opinion, is just a waste of time, man. Because culturally they just don't respect it, and that's fine. Well, you go out there and you date and do whatever you do with other types of women who do respect it because of because of their upbringing. Okay, and again, a lot of the guys in these types of fields, or even in my field, high finance, they're not with frumpy women. So I mean, they can say that we are, but that's not what I've been seeing since I was a kid, and that's all I gotta say.
All right. Thank you, Salchi.
Well, I'll go next. Shout out to his father. My father was born in 1914, so when he came back from the war, he was still sitting in the back of the bus. I was one of the few Black families where the doctor noticed in the 80s, people used to buy encyclopedias because there was no Google. So if you were Black with a set of encyclopedias, you were doing something. I just always remember my father physically read encyclopedias because he really couldn't be what he wanted to be in that time frame. So because he was born in 1914. So as I grew up, he just told me, you're smart. I wanted to be a scientist. So just be smart, be you, and just be great. So I'm just telling everybody out there, let's get it. The tech bros are here. If you want to get in tech, Gabe A, Tech G, we all here. I love coming on Doc's channel because he giving the tech bros a shout out. And if you want to get in technology, you can get it. The bag is here. That's all I got.
Thank you, Professor Black Ops.
To follow up what Professor Black Ops said, I would also shout out Sub-03639. He's also a tech guy. He's an OG on YouTube, and he does have basically an online school where he trains people and he gets them jobs. So, Sub-03639, Tech G, Gabe A, check those guys when it comes to the tech side, which is not my forte, but want to add that. And yeah, man, you know, STEM. If you want to be a scientist, at the end of the day, if that's what you want to do, to hell with, quote unquote, the community, other people. We need scientists, engineers. That's what keeps this world going. Scientists get the inventions, the engineers. Those are the ones who make this shit work. So we need more black men to do that. And another thing I gotta say, as a foreigner, as a immigrant coming out here who's not supposed to speak on ADO stuff, the refusal for black men to get into STEM, it does a disservice when you think of how many ADOS inventors, when all the credit got stolen from them, at the height of Jim Crow slavery, antebellum South, you had so many black folks without the formal training, the formal schoolings, who were natural born scientists, engineers, inventors. You got to keep that going. I mean, it's in the population. There's all that talent that if people focus on the STEM instead of trying to be rappers and ballers to impress the women, I'm convinced if we had more ADOS FBA Black Americans in STEM right now, the diesel emission scandal that happened with the Volkswagen and stuff, that would have never happened, because I bet you a Black American engineer would have figured out how to build a diesel engine with better emissions. We already would have had nuclear thermal rockets, and all this talk Elon Musk talks about going to Mars. If we had more black men into STEM and engineering, we already would have had that. And that's a disservice. So I'm going to plead to Black American guys, get into STEM, because, the world is losing out. Stop trying to be a rapper or a baller. Get into STEM, because that's where you're going to make the magic happen. And with that, I'm out, because I know I'm going to get deported. So it's been nice knowing you all.
Nah, we want you to stay. We want you to stay.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I'll talk to you next time. All right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap up. The panelists gave their points of view. My purpose for doing this was just to talk about the culture of science, and going back to Art Newstall's panel, and just in general, when you encourage someone to get into a field, I think it's important to talk about all aspects of it. And there are some unique aspects to being from the quote unquote ADOS tribe and coming from certain communities. And when you launch off into a field like this, whether it's nuclear physics or pharmacology or toxicology, or being an aerospace engineer, you're gonna launch off into a different world, and you're gonna be speaking a different language, and they're gonna be keys to succeeding in that world that might run counter to where you come from and what the dominant cultural norms are in the community that you come from. So it's just, I think it's important when you're talking to young people nowadays and they're going in that area, we should have conversations like this as well with them. What's the culture of the field you're getting into? What's going to be expected of you when you get there? And then, there may be some challenges relating to where you came from. So that's what I wanted to say. That's how I will wrap this up. I want to thank everyone who watched. Thank you to Malcolm Smith for the Cash App. Once again, if you're watching this on the playback and you want to donate something to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are below in the description box. I'm going to minimize this. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. That link is below all the other links in the description box as well. There's a 2-paragraph greeting, And then the subscription button is there at the bottom. In addition to being a YouTube content creator, I am also a writer working on a book. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I will talk to you the next time. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.